Star Wars touches all things touch Star Wars. Legend has it that Mattel, like so many other toy companies, was approached in 1976 about the potential for producing a line of action figures from the upcoming sci-fi flick. Like everyone but Kenner, they said no and spent the next decade just trying to keep up with the runaway train of toy sales that was Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, and the rest of the gang. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and these are 10 things you need to know about the Masters of the Universe. Number 1. After passing on the Star Wars license, Mattel had a lot of work to do and no time to waste. The original concept presented to management featured 3 versions of a very powerful character who could be placed into any setting. Mattel, of course, was already doing very well with the concept of an alpha male having the versatility to be placed into any situation, but I don't have to tell you about Big Jim. Big Jim was Mattel's 12-inch answer to Hasbro's 12-inch fightin' man G.I. Joe, and if there was one thing that Jim and Joe liked more than fightin' and sportsin', it was fashion. The original He-Man concept was pitched as a character who could feature military, barbarian, or sci-fi accessories, allowing him to cross into every genre while simultaneously packing the biggest set of beefed-up arm cannons and the most shredded set of abs that the toy world has ever seen. Number 2. While developing He-Man in 1980, the producers of Conan the Barbarian starring Arnold Schwarzenegger happened to stop in and sign some papers granting Mattel the action figure license for the upcoming film. When Mattel executives got an early look at the film, they winced at the gratuitous sex and violence and probably said something like, "Who do you think we are, Kenner?" Changes were made to the film in an attempt to appease Mattel, but ultimately it wasn't enough and Mattel walked away. When Mattel debuted the He-Man line, the folks at Conan were predictably upset and immediately sued Mattel for stealing their ideas. The courts disagreed and felt that there was enough difference between the two concepts and that Mattel had already begun work on He-Man long before being approached by the folks at Conan, that the suit was dropped and Mattel moved forward with Blonde Conan. Number 3. Give Mattel some credit. While they muffed the opportunity to produce Star Wars toys, they at least recognized the degree to which the Star Wars films acted as commercials for the toys. Masters of the Universe toys hit shelves in 1982, followed by the daily half-hour cartoon in 1983. While dumb kids like me thought the cartoon was produced in response to the popularity of the toys, the adults recognized that it was the other way around. The show existed to sell more toys, and while cool parents like mine didn't care as long as it shut me up and left them alone, others did not like it at all. That sentence didn't make any sense. In response to Masters of the Universe, G.I. Joe, Transformers, My Little Pony, Care Bears, and all the other great heroes of the 80s, monopolizing too much of the kids' daytime hours and forcing their parents to buy them more toys, the FCC enacted the Children's Television Act in 1990 to regulate the type, quality, and volume of content aimed at cool kids like me, and that is why Saturday morning cartoons have sucked ever since. Number 4. Masters of the Universe ran from 1982 to 1988 with nearly 100 different characters and a wide assortment of vehicles and playsets. I don't know the final count, it depends, like, is Mantisaur a character or just a robotic mantis? It spawned a literal sister line called She-Ra Princess of Power that ran from 1985 to 1987 and introduced another 25 to 30 characters. Again, depends on how you count. The point is, they moved a lot of product and introduced a lot of original concepts into pop culture. And no great success is without copycats, especially a line that, from an engineering standpoint, is so easily reproduced. Knockoff He-Man figures with all the rippling muscles and sci-fi barbarian themes could be found at every department store and gas station around the country. Lines like Sun Gold's Galaxy Fighters and Galaxy Warriors, and of course, Remco's Warlord, Hercules, and Conan. Number 5. At the height of popularity, after successfully mastering the toy aisle and the television, He-Man made his way to the big screen in 1987's Masters of the Universe, starring Dolph Lundgren as He-Man and Frank Langella as Skeletor. Dolph was fresh off his appearance in Rocky IV as Ivan Drago, the man who murdered Apollo Creed. His casting as He-Man has got to be unprecedented for the fastest heel face turn in the history of movie casting. Langella, on the other hand, was fresh off a bunch of films with titles that were so boring I fell asleep reading the IMDb page. Masters of the Universe was a box office and critical failure, grossing $17.3 million off a budget of $22 million, but it is remembered fondly today by the fans who grew up with it until they watch it again and remember that it was terrible. Number 6. The terrible performance of the terrible film in 1987 sent Mattel back to the drawing board in an attempt to reinvent He-Man for the 90s in a show called The New Adventures of He-Man. The Adam formerly known as Prince is transported into the future by the last of mankind to defend them in their hour of need, complete with a ponytail and blue jeans. It's a continuation of the original continuity far into the future and also features the original Skeletor who followed him and was more severely disfigured, and is now a cyborg. It lasted one season and there were some figures, but can we just move on? Number 7, the license sat unused in Mattel's offices until a commemorative set of repackaged vintage-style figures was released to gauge interest from fans in 2000. Mattel then started work on a new line of figures designed and sculpted by Four Horsemen Studios and an all-new animated series updating the classic themes and plots and filling in some of the holes from the original storyline. The line hit in 2002 and featured figures far more stylized and with far more detail than that of the original line. Mattel would squeeze 3 years of mild performance out of the line, revisiting nearly every character before letting NECA Toys finish off the pieces they decided not to produce as non-articulated statue action figures, or staction figures. Number 8, recognizing that there was still value in the brand, especially now that the core audience was approaching their mid-30s and probably had some money to burn, Mattel reimagined the line with a commitment to honoring the tone of the original figures, but with today's sculpting and articulation. Further emphasizing the approach to adult collectors, completely disregarding any attempt to engage a younger audience, Masters of the Universe Classics was a subscription-based line with basic per-figure costs as well as a subscription fee. Classics began in 2008 and hundreds of figures later is still going through 2016 and beyond. Every single original character in the Masters of the Universe and She-Ra Princess of Power lines has been revisited, and scores of others have come to life that were never given the chance when the original line ended in 1987. Classics has run longer and produced more figures than the original line for a generation who just can't let go. Number 9, as if Classics wasn't enough, in 2016, Mattel introduced Classics 2.0, focused on figures that actually looked like the guys in the cartoons. With smooth, untextured surfaces and bright, vivid colors, it's a line that fans of the show have waited their entire lives for, no longer wondering why the figures and the characters in the show look nothing alike. With an initial run of 7 different characters, He-Man, Skeletor, Trapjaw, Beastman, Evil Seed, Evil Lyn, and Clawful, the future of the 2.0 line is uncertain, but encouraging. Number 10, the future is uncertain because in 2016, Mattel announced that they would be handing the production, sale, and distribution of the Classics line over to Super 7, an independent toy company previously known for short-run designer vinyl action figures, and their partnership with Funko on the Reaction line of retro-style action figures featuring licenses from properties like Aliens, Back to the Future, Gremlins, The Rocketeer, Nightmare on Elm Street, Street Fighter, and more. Super 7 had already worked with the He-Man license as part of their Motussel figures. Check out our video on that, and as part of the Reaction line. Right out of the gate, Super 7 announced an initial offering of the core Classics characters He-Man, Skeletor, Teela, Faker, and Ram Man, with multiple head and accessory sets to give collectors who might have missed them and didn't want to pay the increased secondary market prices a chance to own them. The future is very bright for Masters of the Universe thanks to Super 7, who have proven to be able to navigate the new landscape of toys and collectibles directed at a smaller market, and are clearly big fans of the brand themselves. The possibilities are open for where the line goes from here, and we could be on the verge of a new golden age of Masters of the Universe, especially if you're an adult collector who's been hooked ever since Prince Adam first raised the sword of power above his head and said, "I have more power than Jesus! I have more power than Jesus!" Thanks for watching. Please give this video a like, share it, subscribe, and let us know in the comments below if you were, are, or are considering becoming a He-Man collector. That last line, "I have more power than Jesus," is a reference to a video produced back in the 80s suggesting that all of the toys and cartoons have a terrible demonic influence and is 100% worth watching if you haven't seen it before. It's called Deception of a Generation and is on YouTube now. Good. Cut.